meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Cabe, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you will hear stories from men and women who have experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers, foster parents, or others who are here to bring you hope or encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. All right. Well, I am so very happy to have with me Danika Briggs. Now, I want to tell you just a little bit about her before I get her on here. But Danika has worked with one of our TFI advocates, Angie Grant, one of our advocates who's been with us for many, many, many years. They have now known each other for over 10 years. They have an awesome partnership. We both mutually have a deep love for Angie, right, Danika?
Absolutely.
And she has been in social services for over 20 years now. She's had lots of different experiences in direct service, but now she's actually in leadership overseeing their child welfare programs at their social service agency. And so we're going to talk about the agency worker and just she's going to give us some perspective on this part of the foster care community. So Danika, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. I really have to ask, though, from the very beginning, how did you first get connected with Angie?
Oh, my goodness. So Angie decided that she wanted to, work with the foster care community in the jurisdiction that she resided in. And that's our jurisdiction, Chesterfield-Colonial Heights. And she invited some ladies over. And at the time, it was our foster parent trainer for a brunch to just talk about her ideas. And I was a permanency supervisor at that time, and I oversaw the foster parent program. So when the trainer came back and she was telling me about this amazing brunch that she had and all these ideas, I was like, okay, this sounds a little too good to be true. And then I had an opportunity to meet Angie. And when I tell you Angie's just energy and passion are infectious, I mean, they really are. And I quickly just saw Angie's heart for service, her passion for the foster care community. And 10 years later, we still have an amazing partnership.
I love that. And I love that, excuse me. And I love that you guys have been able to maintain this relationship even as your role has changed.
Yes. Yeah,
that's really awesome.
And that was one of the things that I was concerned about initially, because, people will come and they'll want to maybe do an activity or an event. But Angie told us from the beginning, I'm here for the long haul. And, when she started, we were talking about different ideas like journey bags for youth who enter foster care. So those are backpacks with essential items for their first couple of days in foster care. So she started with, providing the agency with journey bags. Then it was car kits, because sometimes we are transporting our kids several hours between placements. And so she, provided DVD players for the cars and activities and snacks so that it was a comfortable experience for the children. That's traumatic, not knowing, where you're going. And then the big thing that we've been doing ongoing is our annual holiday party. And we always laugh about this because the holiday party was something that we funded, maybe a budget $200 or $300. There were some years where we cooked the food because we didn't have the money. And Angie's like, $300? You can't do anything with that. Like, we're going to have it catered and we're going to have snow globes and everybody's going to get a gift and it's going to be a party. And I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? And I literally had to go and talk to my attorney and say, can we do this? I was nervous.
Yeah.
But it has been an amazing experience. And it's something that, even though it's a party for our foster youth, it is something that our workers also get so much joy. I remember one of the first events that I went to, we had a young man who he never talked. He would hide under tables. He just was very uncomfortable. And at that party, when the little snow came down, he was jumping, he was smiling, he was grabbing at it. It was my first time seeing him just be like any other kid. Wow. And that right there is what it's all about. We believe, and Angie's heart is that every kid, no matter what their circumstances are, should be celebrated and honored just like we would our children.
I love it so much. Now, when Angie first got connected to you, was she official? Was she coming on behalf of TFI, or was she coming on behalf of herself at this point?
She was coming on behalf of TFI. So we were very familiar and introduced to TFI. The emergency response, that was something that was also, extremely helpful, because we would have situations where maybe children would come into care, or maybe we were trying to prevent children from coming into care, and a relative may have wanted to be an option. And so, we would be able to call the first response and get help with getting like cribs and car seats and strollers, those things to really help alleviate some of those, initial needs that come, when you first receive a child into your home.
It's neat to hear you talk, because it's taking me back to my own early days with TFI when it all began. I'm picturing the PDFs that we created with first response, with card kits, I'm picturing the agency office here in Bloomington, where I would deliver these items. It's very cool.
Yes.
So I know that you said a lot of times people will come, and they came and they would, come maybe for a project or something. When did you recognize that Angie really, she said she was here for the long haul, but when did you really begin to trust that and be able to see that these were not just words, but this was a serious commitment?
Absolutely. Angie really took the time to get to know each of us. And even though this started as, a professional endeavor where, she was coming, with the church that she and her husband pastor to partner with us as a local agency, I will say that Angie and I now have an amazing friendship. It has definitely evolved, even beyond TFI. And I think that's because, she had conversations with us outside of the projects. She would just check in and see how we were doing. She would, just randomly just say, hey, I want to do something for the staff, or let me know when it's been a really tough week so that we can come by and just give the staff, some encouragement. And that's when I knew, again, it's her passion, is in this. She also, would invite us to different things that were going on at the church. And so I saw that this wasn't just, a project. They have a whole ministry in the church to support foster parents. And so then we began to partner with our foster parent recruitment, where Pastor Stan would preach a sermon series around foster care. And then we would host informational sessions around the same time, so that, some would go through the church, some would go through our community sessions. They would do a screening as well for prospective foster parents, and let people know, if they're interested in helping, it's more than just foster parenting. So even if you don't want to be, or you're not in a position to be a foster parent, how can you support foster families? Maybe you have a business and you can help, a youth in foster care gain some work experience, or maybe you can provide meals for a foster parent who has a new placement or respite. So they developed this really robust program. And what we found was our foster families who were connected with the church, they were so well resourced that there was a stability that came with them. Even through those most difficult placements, they not only had us and their worker and our foster parent coordinator, but they also had Angie and the resources at the church. They started a support group, the Connect support group, where, once a month they would talk about various topics, and Angie's very big on Empowered to Connect. So, she used a lot of that curriculum just to help people to understand the different challenges that they might experience as foster parents, but then create a sense of community so that when those tough times came, you knew who you could call on. And that's really a big purpose behind that partnership is how do we help create community outside of the formal process that we have? Because we know that there is nothing traditional about foster parenting. And you're going to encounter things that, unfortunately, from an agency perspective, we're not going to have the same perspective. And so it's really important for our foster parents to also have people that they trust and can call upon when times are tough. And that helps with that retention, too, of foster parents.
That's what I was going to ask you. Were you seeing and have you seen not only retention of foster parents, but foster parents being able to keep kids longer, less turnover, less disruption of placement?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing that would happen is that if the foster parents were in that church and they needed respite, for example, there was already another family that youth was accustomed to seeing. So it wasn't like you would need to go to another complete strange family.
Right.
But it was almost like a natural support that existed. And so not only was it supportive for the foster parents, but it was also a support for the youth in foster care.
Wow. That's incredible. When you mentioned you had reached out to your supervisor, is this okay? Talk more about kind of the natural hesitations and the important walls that need to be up sometimes when bringing in the community or the church to care for kids or to be a part of caring for, not in a traditional sense of being a foster parent, but to be a part of supporting the foster care community.
Yes. Well, our world is definitely very well regulated in terms of, what we can, and cannot do. And so, to have an organization come and say, we want to do this. One, I wanted to make sure there were no conflict of interest or, that it would not be perceived. It wasn't as if it was a business where there would be some exchange of goods or services or things of that nature. So I just wanted to ensure that we were staying within the policies and procedures, of our county in terms of what we could and could not accept. And I think I had never been approached by someone who wanted to do so much, but just out of the goodness of their heart. Like she expected absolutely nothing in return. And so, initially there's just that caution, like, okay, so what is this really about?
Yeah, right. Is this for real?
Is this for real? Is good people like this really do just exist? So really just wanting to make sure and obviously informing these relationships and introducing someone, to our agency as a partner. I definitely wanted to ensure that it was going to be someone that, their values, their mission, they aligned, with our department. I will say that over the 10 years, the Forgotten Initiative has been recognized a number of times by our Board of Supervisors, by our City Council. We are a dual jurisdiction. So both entities have recognized the Forgotten Initiative. We have definitely mentioned them in a number of partnerships. We've had adoption parties. Where, they would come in once we finalized an adoption and we would just host like a little reception, for the family and their supports after the court hearing. So really just trying to think of ways to, again, normalize the experiences that our youth in foster care and our foster families experience.
Yeah. Wow. I've been asked this question. I'm curious your answer, but, church and state don't always have a history of working well together. Yes. Why do you think this works? And was there pushback from other people in the agency to say, we don't want to necessarily partner with a faith-based organization?
There was no pushback. And that was amazing. And there was a comfort level, from myself and from my leadership. We are all people of faith. And so, these are things that we do sort of in our personal lives. So it was a natural fit.
Nice.
And so, there wasn't that resistance. I will say that in talking with other local departments of social services and bringing it up, there were definitely a lot of concerns about that. And, there were times where we would talk with other locals just to say, like, we can't do everything on our own. Like, it really does take a community of support to do the work that we do. But I will say that I'm in a jurisdiction that was extremely supportive of this and that really believes in community partnerships, that we are just one aspect of serving our community, and we all have to work together in order to most effectively meet our community's needs. And so that made it, a lot
helpful.
Easier.
Yeah. And I mean, that is definitely different parts of the country. We get much different stories.
I'm sure
there, but the same reality exists in the sense that when you truly care about someone, like Angie came to you and truly cared, she wasn't just trying to have transactional relationship.
Absolutely.
She cared about you, about your person, about the people in your agency, about the kids, and about how they could help. It shows when it's consistent, right? When you keep coming back and keep coming back. That's great. Excuse me. Talk about how partnership, I mean, you've mentioned many of the things that happened, but you said you've gone from, a wonderful partnership to a deep friendship.
Yes.
Talk about how it looked early on and how it's changed.
Yes. So I think early on, it was really, hearing the different ideas that Angie had about ways to support, that she could support the agency. And Jen, just normally, with these interactions, sometimes we would meet, we would have lunch, and we would have these discussions. So, it happens sometimes to be more formal in the boardroom. But, we would naturally talk about our families and, just, things that were just going on. And like I said, she would invite us to different events that were happening, at the church as well. And again, it was just seeing her heart and seeing that, she just not only had a mission for TFI, but she just has a mission for people, and for connecting with people. So a large part of, what I saw with her, that's just who Angie is. And, it's just recognizing that. And so, she is somebody that, if I need some extra prayer and things are going on, I can count on Angie, to be that one, to do that, to add that support. I have a number of cards that I've kept that, she's given that just have inspirational words and scriptures, because it's, this job is tough.
Yes.
And some days you just need that extra encouragement, and you need to know that, hey, I see you. There have been times where I've called upon her, most recently for Social Work Month in March. I said, you know what, Angie, I really want to do something for my leadership team. It's been really tough. Coming out of the pandemic, families' needs have definitely been exacerbated, and we are dealing with situations that we have never dealt with before. And it's taken a toll, on not only our staff, but on our leaders. And I said, I really just want to honor the leaders. And she was like, Danika, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't really have any thoughts, about what that looks like. She had a catered lunch, and she had gifts for all of the leaders. And, of course, whenever we do things like that, she shares just inspirational messages, with them, just to keep them encouraged. And again, just to let folks know, like, hey, we see you. We know this isn't easy. You are not here alone. Yeah. And just a reminder of just the different ways that TFI can assist, because sometimes, when you're in the midst of things, you might forget, like, oh, yeah, this resource was there. Sure. So just, that reminder, just to let folks know, like, hey, we're here, we're a partner. Just call on us. I think for me, I had to initially get over my hesitation to call on her, because she would say, Danika, if you need something, just call me, let me know. And I'm like, but I don't want to call too much, I don't want to sort of, abuse, the resource. But there's been nothing that we have requested that she has not done. And when I tell you she not only does it, it's done in a spirit of excellence. So it is going to be done as if she's doing it for one of her children or grandchildren. It's amazing to see. Just another thing, we were recognizing our graduates in June. We had about 4 graduates, and only one showed up for the event. Okay. But that one, when she, received her gift, from TFI, and we were just talking to her, she just broke down in tears. And she said, no one has ever done this for me. She said, I didn't even know that I would ever graduate. And I looked at Angie and I said, you know what? This is why we're here. This one, we truly made a difference. She will remember this day that we are all here to celebrate her, and that she is important, and that she is valued. And this is an accomplishment that is worthy of being celebrated, even if it's just her.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is why we do what we do. I wouldn't have been able, my agency would not have been able to do that on our own. But in partnership with TFI, we were really able to surround this young lady with support to encourage her as she's entering into adulthood on her own without other supports. And so it's moments like those that just really keep me grounded. And again, in recognizing that it takes a community to really be able to do the things that we want to do in the most effective manner.
That's incredible. And I'm thinking about her as she goes off. She has this launching pad now to go back to and say, I did that. I did that really, really hard thing. And people supported me. That means that says to her brain, right? I can do more. I can keep going. That it is, because without that, what might have happened? She may not have moved on, right? She may, we just don't know the power of, you've mentioned a couple times when Angie has just said or shown, I see you. I'm just over and over amazed. I hear that all the time when I talk to guests, the power of, I see you, right? You're not alone. That is a huge passion of ours, is that everyone in the foster care community understands and feels that you are not alone, and that there is always hope in Jesus. That's what we do. That's what we want to do in everything that we do.
Absolutely. When you lose that hope, it is challenging to move forward. And that's one of the things that, I say, in terms of the work that I do, it is really just trying to help people to find, sometimes you have to dig deep, just to find that, but, to help them find that hope and that motivation to move forward. I use the analogy as a book, this is just one chapter in your book. You have the ability to rewrite the rest of the story, and it does not have to end this way. It is just one chapter. And so how do we help people to, to see their inherent worth, their inherent value? Because there have been so many things that they've been struggling with. Right. That they might not see that. So how do we help them, get to that point and to realize, you're worthy. You are worthy of so much more. Your children deserve so much more, so how do we help to rally around them? And with our kids who, have been in foster care and aging out, we want to stop that cycle. Right. We want this young lady who just graduated from high school to, enter the workforce or some type of post-secondary education, so that she can become a productive citizen, get the help that she needs. Because as you become an adult and you go through different life experiences, she's going to be triggered by different things that have happened. But, how do we help her to deal with those things in the most healthy manner? And know where to go to, so that when those, situations in life happen, she knows how to navigate them in a healthier way.
Right. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about agency turnover.
Yes.
You mentioned how TFI and Angie and the church partnership, how that has helped foster parent retention and keeping kids in homes. Are you seeing any of that help in the agency turnover? And maybe even beyond, like has Angie or TFI been helpful? Let's first talk about the reality of agency turnover, because it is a very, very challenging work.
It is extremely challenging. And, it's something that is a huge priority, in terms of us, because when staff leave the agency, the impact is so huge.
Yeah.
You have the impact on the remaining team members because, the work still has to get done, so, then the workloads for others, increase, as a result of that. You have the impact on the child who, that's another loss,
right?
That they are experiencing. For the foster parents as well, it's kind of like starting a new relationship where you learn what works, what doesn't work. Like there's this little dance that you're doing until, you finally kind of get in that groove. But I think, the biggest impact is when that worker leaves, a lot of history leaves with that person. I don't care how well you document. There are just certain things that the person who has been really involved in the primary on that case, that they know, it's just inherent. And sometimes that doesn't get conveyed as well, through documentation. Sure. And so, there's a breakdown, that happens. And let's not forget, there's a professional team that's surrounding, this child, this foster family, this worker. So there are other service providers. There's a guardian ad litem. We have court-appointed special advocates in our jurisdiction. There's so many other people, that are part of this decision-making process, the biological family. And so, it has a tremendous impact. And, while it's been a challenge in child welfare over the years where, we would say the average length of a child welfare worker was about 2.5 to 3 years. Now it might be a year, if that.
Wow.
The work it is challenging. And when I think about, especially, the last year or so, a lot of our newer staff are coming out of the pandemic where, during their college experience, a lot of it may have been virtual. There may have been more breaks and, a lot more accommodations just based on the impact of the pandemic. And once they transition into the workforce, those things don't exist, that way. So it's been a tough transition, not to mention the secondary traumatic stress that staff face as a result of the traumas that they are reading about or that they are walking alongside that their youth are experiencing. And so some people have a difficult time, once the end of the day comes, kind of turning that off.
Right.
And, they may say, I'm having trouble sleeping, or I'm having more anxiety, or I was dreaming about this situation, last night. And so as an agency, we are really looking at secondary traumatic stress and how we can, better support staff. How do we incorporate more wellness during the day? So we have a wellness room that TFI also. Yes. They, again, it was like, Angie, it would be great if we had a place where staff could just go and decompress. It's a beautiful room that, that they funded, for us as, kind of like a serenity suite where folks can go. So really wanting to promote, staff using that, encouraging, just being aware of what you're feeling, and equipping our supervisors to be able to have those conversations. Like it's more than just the work. So, how do we also check in with our people? to, just make sure, even if they appear that they're handling it well, how do we really help to create a psychologically safe environment where our staff can say, you know what, I didn't sleep well last night, or I keep thinking about this particular situation. And then how do you respond to that?
Right.
So that when they do acknowledge those things, that you are responding in a supportive manner, but also providing the resources to be able to help them, to best effectively cope with, whatever they're experiencing. So it is a multifaceted issue in terms of, the retention of staff. I think the thing that is this challenging for me is when you have really good staff who have made that decision that they need to leave the field. And I respect that decision because it's, you have to do what works best for you. But I definitely try to understand, like, how did it get to this point? Is there anything that, we could have done differently, or, what may have been more helpful to support you, in the work? Because that's what I want to focus on in terms of supporting, the rest of the workforce.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing is, obviously, you guys are the expert in knowing your people, and you're the ones who can make those decisions. I love that. Then when you have an idea that is outside of the realm of like something you can provide, you can reach out, in this case, to TFI and to say, can you create this space?
Yes.
Hopefully those staff appreciation things, that is a help. But yes, this is such a large issue. It's not just fixed by one little thing, right? It's a whole effort. But do you feel like there has been any sort of, do you feel like there's been any correlation of help for staff retention or even staff satisfaction while they're there?
I definitely think in terms of staff satisfaction, absolutely. Just to know that support is there. Again, sometimes there are things that, our staff needs that they see for their youth in foster care. And again, we don't have the means. It used to be that maybe a staff member had a youth in residential and they, would want to do something for that youth. And they were personally, going in their pockets and doing these things.
Yeah.
Now we have a resource through TFI where we're able to say, like, hey, this is what's going on. Are you able, to assist, with this? And so I think, again, that's helpful, just being able to know that there is someone else there, that we can call upon to help. And then again, I know that whenever the appreciation events happen, the staff are truly appreciative of those things. Because when you look at just in society in general, you see a lot of appreciation for, say, first responders or, for teachers or for nurses, but you don't hear about the social workers too often.
Totally.
And in a lot of situations, we are like the first responders, and especially on the Child Protective Services side, we literally are responding with our law enforcement officials to situations. Right. So we're facing the same sorts of challenges, but you don't necessarily get that same sense of recognition or appreciation from the community. Right. So to have an organization like TFI to provide that, again, it's showing us that our work is valued and that there's some appreciation for what we do. You don't always see us painted in the most positive light in the media.
Absolutely. Right.
And so, again, that validation, it really is important.
Right. And we know that's not why you're doing what you're doing.
Correct.
But it does make a difference in helping we all need to we have a need to be seen or to be valued. Right.
Absolutely.
And especially, I think that's why ultimately, as a person of faith, we know that Jesus is our ultimate identity and value. And it is so helpful when his people and when others acknowledge, like, thank you for doing that. we see you, we support you, because he has given us each other as well to help each other along this path. I want to acknowledge, Danika, like, man, you have said some very beautiful things about TFI, and thank you for that. TFI doesn't work without the church and without people like Angie, without our advocates. But I want to just value you and the work that you do, and all these child welfare workers. I mean, as I've heard your stories today, but over the past decade and more, and had personal experience with workers in my home. My husband and I were foster parents. I just need you to know that what you do matters so very much, that we see the toll it takes, that we see the tears that you have cried for kids. We see the long hours and the stress, and we see the lack of appreciation and feeling like the bad guy, because that is being misunderstood, being misrepresented.
Yes.
I mean, those things are so painful, especially when you're deeply just trying to do good for these kids and these families. And I see too, the way, even as you are now in leadership, the vast value and importance of what you're doing in being able to see a bigger picture, and how can we support our workers? How can we help this retention thing that is just, it feels so large and looming, right? To keep good people. I just want you to know, thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, the work you do for our communities, for our kids is just, it's immeasurable.
Thank you. And I definitely appreciate, Jamie, you spotlighting, agency staff, because yes, we definitely have a responsibility in terms of our jobs, but these are really people who, they have a passion to serve. You don't get into this unless you have a passion to serve. And again, it's not easy work. And so, having a community that not only supports our families and the youth that we work with, but also support us.
Yes.
That is it is extremely important. You hear the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Sometimes we need to be poured into as well. Yes. And I'm extremely grateful for the many ways that, Angie and the Forgotten Initiative have done that. And I know will continue to partner with us in the future.
I love that so much. Is there anything else, Danika, as we kind of close out here, just that's on your heart that you want to share? I just want to give you the final word.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. Again, I will just say that, again, our staff, they approach this with a desire to serve. And I've seen numerous instances where our staff are out supporting our foster children at the expense of their own families. And so, a number of sacrifices are made, and they truly do love what they do. I think the work is challenging because, as a foster parent, especially, you might be dealing with 1, 2, or 3 children. Our staff may be dealing with 12 or 15. And so I just, I do ask for grace, for our staff. I know that sometimes it can be frustrating when you're not getting the responses that you want, as quickly as you need it. But, just for grace, because, our staff are working under considerable challenges, not just with the workload, but there's so many other policies and procedures that are in place to ensure the safety, well-being, and permanency, of youth in foster care, especially. And, just to keep those lines of communication open. I always encourage, people, if you have a concern, just surface it. We want to hear about it. Let's figure out how to work through it and not wait until it becomes such a big issue that it festers and, there's potentially damage to a relationship and or a placement. We would never want it to get to the point where, there's a risk of a placement disruption. Because a foster parent did not feel like they were getting the support that they needed. So the communication, open communication, transparency, that's extremely supportive. If ever you have challenges with your worker, know that the worker always has someone that they're reporting to. So reach out to the supervisor. reach out to your foster parent trainer. Again, we all work together, to help support. And I think it's just keeping in mind our main goal is the best interest of that child.
Right.
And if we can stay just focused that we all want what's best for that child, we may have different ideas on what exactly that looks like. But if at the core, we can understand that we all want what's best for that child, I think it's a lot easier to extend grace to each other during those challenging moments.
I love that so much. Well, I told you get the last word, but I just have to say this. I just feel really blessed and grateful to link arms with you in this work of loving on the foster care community. And I just appreciate you so very much. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. And you guys are doing some amazing work at the Forgotten Initiative. So I hope you understand the impact that you all have, and you are needed. There is purpose in what you are doing.
Thank you so, so much. Well, I hope that today's episode encouraged you wherever you are on your foster care journey. We want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will never miss an episode. Also, we have great content at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching. I cannot wait to be with you next time.